Good morning and welcome to Motivational Monday. I'm Cheryl Andrews, the founder of Step by Step Listening, and it's 8 o'clock in the morning here in the UK. The seasons are slowly changing. If you notice, it's a bit lighter here. So the sun is now up, which is nice because we've got a bit more brightness as I'm doing the live videos here on a Monday morning. So the subject today is destination addiction. I was very, very lucky to go and see Robert Holden. If you don't know who he is, then do Google Robert Holden at the Positive Living Group with Jackie White last Wednesday. And he is all about happiness and the happiness coach. And he talked about this description of behavior called destination addiction. And I want to talk about this today because it was very reassuring for me as somebody who's been on her journey to work out what I needed to work, learn and live at my best, is that I developed the clarity process, as you know, in the book. And the A is about where is your attention. And what I discovered, as Robert was also affirming for me, he's a highly acclaimed speaker, coach, author, and it's always reassuring for me as a new author to hear that the theories that I've come up with have also been endorsed by psychology, etc. So the theory behind the destination addiction is that we are always living in the future. You know, when I retire, I'll do X, Y, and Z. When I lose weight, then I'll be happy. And so when people say, how are you? And you go, I'm getting there. So it's always going to be something that's happening in the future. And I talk about the A is when we're coaching people, we're paying attention to where is your attention. So I want you to think about that today. It's like when you got out of bed this morning, where is your attention? When you listen to your language, which is the L from the clarity process, what kind of language are you using? Is your attention on what didn't happen or didn't work in the past? Is it all focused on what you want to have happen in the future? And whilst all of this works, if you can reflect back on things and you include what worked, what didn't work, and what needs to work better. So you give the what's working and what's not working and what needs to work better equal attention in the past. If you think about the future and you think if the future is just the way you'd like it to be, it would be like what? So you get a real clear picture, you get clarity of what it is you want in the future, but you also do contingency planning. So what could go wrong? One of the things that really doesn't work well with goal setting and futuristic thinking is that you only think about if it was just the way you'd like it. So that's kind of dreaming. If you want to turn that into a really solid plan, is you need to think about what it'd be like if it was just the way you'd like it to be. You need to think about how do you need to be? What kind of attributes do you need? Is it confidence? Is it assertiveness? Is it consistency? Is it who do you need to be? How do you need to show up in order for you to get the outcome you want? So just putting out there what you want isn't enough. You have to give the whole system your attention. So thinking about what do you want? If it was just the way you'd like it to be, how do you need to be? Also thinking what support might you need? But also thinking what could go wrong? Because if you spend some time now, people often think, oh, it's just a waste of time. I haven't got time. But by having had that conversation with yourself, your family, your team, then your brain already has a plan or a strategy. So when something goes wrong, instead of going into survival mechanism, instead of your critic going into fight, flight, or freeze, and really stressing about what we're going to do now, oh my God, this is happening, you've already thought it through. You've already got an essence of what could go wrong. And I'm those of you who have done Wealth Dynamics, I'm on the blaze energy, so I tend to be very star at what's working, thinking about all the positives out of it. I love motivating people. I like peacekeeping. And over the other side of the Wealth Dynamics, the steel energy, it was about creating systems so you don't keep repeating yourself. It's about streamlining processes. And the accumulator energy is like asking what could go wrong. It's like the completely opposite side to me. When I started to realize that I wasn't giving what could go wrong any attention, that's when I started to feel much calmer because I had a plan. So if I want to earn this amount of money, or I want to make this kind of difference to the charity, so this is what I want to do. Okay, well, if that doesn't happen, so what could go wrong with that? And what will be my strategy? How will I deal with it? So that's your past, that's your future. And in both areas, you're looking at what's working, what's not working, and what needs to work better, or what could work, or what could go wrong, and what would you need to do if that happened. So that's the areas of attention. And what Robert Holden was really reminding me about, and I'm really glad that I went there to remind myself, and is that we often talk about things in the future or the past, but we don't talk very much about the present. So one of the things that, if you've heard about affirmations before, I got these when I first started, but I really didn't get them, if that makes any sense. So I would say, I want to be healthy. So that's future tense. So that's always telling your brain that sometime in the future you're going to be healthy, but right now you're not. So when I learned to say, okay, so what I want is to be healthy, and I looked at what has worked in the past for me to be healthy, and I look at what is working right now, then I start to give the present my attention. So this is where destination addiction comes in, is that you're always in the future. You know, like, so if something goes wrong in your life, you might say things like, I will be okay. That's future. If you were to say to yourself, I am okay, then that's present. And I used to do the affirmations. They say, make the statement present tense and the pronoun of I. Now, I did that, but I didn't believe it. And the only way I could get to the point where I really believed that I am okay was by doing the strength and solution detective listening, where I was actually collecting the evidence of what is working, or what has worked, or what could work. So giving the positive, if you like, lots of evidence. And it's not just happy clappy, it's like you really need the evidence. So what am I seeing and hearing that tells me it's working? And then it's about your memory. How are you going to remind your brain that that is the case? Because this is all to do with your critic is recalling memories. And if you have an experience where it didn't work before and it caused you emotional pain, upset, or stress, or anxiety, all of that stays in your memory, in your physical body, in your head as well. So you have to then update that system. You have to then let it know that you are okay today, that everything's working. And the only way I know how to do that is to remember all your 5 senses. I'll talk about this in the curiosity section of the book. Is that, so how are you going to see it? So I've got a statement up here that says, I'm wealthy and worthy of love and kindness. Okay, so I can see it on a daily basis. I then say it to myself on a daily basis. So then I get the auditory. I also, when I'm eating food that is really good for me, so I know that it's really good for me, I'm also reaffirming, because now I've got a sort of a visual representation there. It's almost, I've got a, not almost, I have got a visual around with me all the time. It doesn't matter where I am, I can see those words. But you're looking at the smell and taste. But I've also got a metaphor for this. So when I'm worthy and wealthy, worthy, and love and kindness, that's like what? And for me, it's like a little gold heart in here. And when I press that, so that's my touch, when I press that space, it's like I press a button and the whole of my heart lights up and radiates out. So by using metaphor, I can get my whole system in touch with when it's working, when it's going just the way I'd like it to be, in the present tense. So if you, we've got a few of you online today. Fab, we've got Lorna, Claire, thank you for joining us. G, good morning. Leanne Sneeze, lovely to see you. Zoe and Mo. If I miss it, Steve, lovely to see you all. So just checking with you at the moment, does that, can you relate to that? Are you noticing in your language that you've got destination addiction? It's always like, in the future, I'm going to be this. Well, things will take time. Some things do take time, okay? You can't go from 0 to 100 without a process of having to build things up. So there is a fact that there's going to be some that's futuristic. But if you want to be happier, then there's going to be some happy right now. And even if you think there isn't anything right now, then I would say dig deep, because there will be something. Even if it's a really like a grain of a sand, and what you want to do is build a mountain, and you've got right now just one grain of sand, you have something. And by talking to yourself and recognizing what is working and talking to other people about what is working, you settle your critic. You help yourself manage your critic, because if it thinks it's always going to be in the future, it's never going to happen, then you go into survival brain. And so your critic's in fight, flight, or freeze. That takes all the blood from your neocortex brain, takes it from the place where you get clarity and you can't think clearly. So I'd love to know, G, you put down that you give positive lots of evidence, fab, and you use the 5 senses. And you put, use metaphor to get in touch with the present. But one of the things I hadn't consciously realised with clean language is that we repeat back to the client, what kind of that, is there anything else about that? And when past, what kind of past is that past? And we're very much staying in the present, if that makes any sense. It's very much making it very real right now. And it's that physical updating of your systems, your memory banks, your intelligence that says to your system, you're okay, you're safe, that everything's working. So I want you to really think about your tenses this week. I want you to notice whether you're constantly talking about the past, the future, or are you in the present tense? Also notice whether you're talking about what's working or what's not working. And it is really important, when I get a client who comes to me who is very, very focused on the past and what's not working, I will listen to that and make sure that whole of that story has been heard. Then I will ask them what they'd like to have happen. And that might give them what they want to have happen right now. That might give them a future response. They might give me what they wished had happened. And when they say, well, I wish I had been more confident, I'll go, and what kind of confidence is that confident? And that confident is what? And they start to, without consciously being aware of it, talk about confident in a present tense. And that is where the update comes. That's where the importance is to tell your system. So be aware of it. But parenting, we can often say to our children, you will be okay. But if we actually said, you are okay. Right now, you are okay. You are enough. Not you're going to get there. You are there. You are more than enough. And you've got this. You can do this. And I say to children, but I also say that we need that as adults as well. So talk about if you can get your peer support, your support network to remind you that you are okay today. And you remind yourself, whether you write it down, whether you record it and listen back to it, but it's reminding yourself right now that you are okay. So under the clarity process, what we're talking about today is the A for attention. We're also looking at L, looking at your language. And then looking at the feedback process, you've got the reflection. How are you going to get that reflected back to yourself so that you can constantly update and ensure that your language is in the present tense? G, if I tend to focus on the past and what's not working, I'm okay and I can do this. Thank you for reframing that. And it is working out whatever your thing is, because I tend to look at what is not working right now and the past tense. And when I came across Clean 10 years ago, it taught me to look at what I wanted to have happen. And then I came across Caitlin's work about 3 or 4 years later. And the Clean feedback model is what is working, what's not working, what needs to work better. And when I started asking what is working, something shifted inside of me that my system started to get more balance. We talk about wanting to be in balance. And I truly believe it's where we put our attention. If we're giving, and I've worked with people who are really positive, that they talk about what's working all the time, but they feel like something's not quite right. And what I find is that there is that little niggle about something that's not working, but they kind of just brush over it, and they don't allow themselves to even think about or talk about what's not working. They see that as being negative. So then they don't do contingency planning. So then they're wasting energy because their critics going, yeah, but what about this? And although it's happening really quickly, they're not even aware consciously sometimes that it's happening. It's because they're avoiding the emotion. So they're avoiding something. And I'm not saying you have to get into the negativity, but it is like having contingency plans and considering what could go wrong. When I ask clients, what's worked, what's not worked, what needs to work better, quite often there is nothing that hasn't worked. Quite often there is nothing that would make it any better. And that's great, because at least that part of what's not worked has been heard. But if you are avoiding asking the question, avoiding thinking about it, then that tells me that I suspect there is something there that's not being heard. And if it's not being heard, it'll keep niggling away. It'll feel like it's, it's like a little 2-year-old sort of pulling on your trouser leg or your skirt, trying to get your attention. And it will niggle until it's had its voice. Whereas if you can just allow it some space and say, okay, so what could work or what didn't work, and you give all of it equal attention. And then how you determine equal is up to you. One of the things that I do with my clients is we might give it equal time. So I might talk about talk for 6 minutes about what is working and 6 minutes about things that are not working. It might be that I write down 10 things that are working, and I have to come up with 10 things that are not working, and 10 things that would need to have to work better. So it might be a number of things, it might be a number of time. I have, sometimes when I'm journaling, I might use, I've got a page for each one of them. Now, sometimes I cannot come up with equal quantities, but I gave it equal time to think about it. So I didn't discount it in any way, shape or form. And equal and equality is always a bit of a misnomer, how you actually decide what's fair and what's equal. But you find a way, and you'll start to know, it will feel, or you'll be able to see it or hear it when it's getting equal opportunity. So it's giving that information equal opportunity rather than it has to have equal numbers. So I may ask it, and I might only have 2 things that are working, and I might have 10 things that are not working. But I gave it all equal opportunity to be heard. I didn't cut any of it short. I didn't stop just because it's uncomfortable or anything like that. So anybody, any questions for today's Motivational Monday, please pop them below. But the call to action this week is for you to pay attention to where your attention is. And quoting Robert Holden, have you got destination addiction? Are you always going to get there? Because your body will not be comfortable not knowing that you are okay right now. It's a fact. So what can you do? What can you say? What evidence do you need to collect? What do you need to, get your detective magnifying glass out and start looking for the evidence of what is working, what could work, what has worked in the past tense, to reassure your system. Because that, for me, is the key to motivation. If you are not grounded, if your whole system doesn't feel settled, then you spend a lot of time in what I would call resistance. So you're sort of like fighting the system. You're not in flow. You're like a salmon trying to get up the river. You're going against the flow. An interesting program yesterday. I'm not sure which channel it was on because Mark put it on, but it was something about the myths about fitness and health, and they were talking about willpower. And they had a group of people who were doing some surveys, and basically they got them to do this leaning against the wall where they sit, and they would time them to see how long they could hold that sitting pose. And then they did some questionnaires, and they came back and timed them again later. And they said it's sheer willpower that is getting them to hold that sitting pose. Now, half of the group had warmed up chocolate cookies in the room, and they were told they were not allowed to eat them until later. And what they discovered is that those who'd been in the room with the cookies, who were having to resist the willpower to eat the cookies, when they came to do their second iteration of sitting against the wall, they had a lack of less energy, less determination, less willpower to hold it, and their actual ability to hold the seated pose was halved. And I think that's a really good example of, if we don't balance our system up with what's working, we don't balance our system up with what could go wrong, or what didn't work and what needs to work better, if we don't look at the whole picture, then we're almost in that resistance. We're working with willpower because you're trying to make yourself think about something positive, or you're trying to make yourself think about you're trying to avoid something, so your system is against you all the time. Whereas if you can listen to all of it, past, present, future, what's working, what's not working, what needs to work better, and you give all of those 3 key areas of your life, your conversation, your language, equal opportunity to be heard. They may not have much to say, but they have to have opportunity. Then you're not resisting it, and you're not expending loads of energy trying to avoid it. So this is why they say talking therapy is really important, because it gets heard, it gets understood. So it says we've just got one online. It might be yourself. So yes, you saw the program as well, G. I think that's all of it. So if you've got any questions, pop them below. Please do come back and tell me how you get on. Tell me where you notice your attention is, and let's see if we can get ourselves, so we can have destination. Fantastic. We need that. We want that to have something to strive towards. It gives us our hopes, our dreams, our aspirations. But the difference is not destination addiction, that you're only talking in the future tense. You're not only talking that one day you're going to be there, because actually what you want is to be, wealthy, worthy, happy, content now and in the future. And that's where I talk in the book about the power of and as well. It's not an either or. It's not like one day I'm going to get there. It's I have to have it now. And you can do that by collecting evidence of when you had it in the past, collecting when you've got it now, and then you can aspire to have more of it if you want to in the future. But if you haven't got that balance between your tenses and you're always future destination focused and addicted to that's going to be there, your system will be draining energy. It will take away your capacity to think clearly, to make good decisions for you, because you're torn between all the tenses. Hope that's been useful to you. I look forward to speaking to you all soon, and I'll see you on What's Working Wednesday at 8 o'clock. See you soon. Bye.